Okay, thank you, Jerry, and RRU. This is a picture of what the farmer describes as the gold paddock. I suspect that's because it produces high-quality barley, which goes to make some of the beers we're going to sample later on, I think. But it also corresponds to where the high-grade mineralization at Tampia actually outcrops. So it certainly is the gold paddock. This is our Trust Me, I'm a Geologist statement. We've released the presentation on the website, company's website, so if you want to have a look at it, go there, please. Okay, this is a pretty exciting time for us. We acquired the project 4 years ago, and as we've heard through the day, it's been pretty tough times. We're now in a position to actually start moving the project forward significantly and have announced some significant new work that's just started in the last couple of weeks. The main takeaway from this slide, or the most important takeaway, is we now have the funds to actually really move the project forward. We've got $6.5 million in the bank, and this will allow us to actually do the work that is needed to be done on Tampia to actually add the value to it. So what I want to do in the talk is basically, for those people who have been following Tampia, basically, and given this is the Explorers Conference, update people on what we've done in the last couple of years, tell people or show people some of the new exploration technologies that have allowed us to actually move the project forward, and for new investors, introduce you to what we think is probably one of the more significant gold development projects in Western Australia at the moment. Okay, Tampia, well, it's located 300 kilometres east of Perth, near the township of Narrabeen, and there we go. These are our exploration licenses, and the main project area that I'll be talking about is centred on these two granted mining tenements there. So the project was initially found by BHP in 1987. One of the issues we have at Tampia, and one of the main issues we had to address after we acquired the project 4 years ago, it's basically covered in wheat paddocks. There's absolutely no outcrop. So the geology was very poorly understood, and a lot of the historic work had basically been focused on about 1% of the project area. So we had to get up to speed on the geological side of things very quickly. The one thing that was very clear from the previous work that was done is there's some significant drill intersections, high-grade gold mineralization, which actually comes all the way through to surface, right where the wheat field is here, or the barley field is here. So from the historic drilling that's been done, we were able to calculate an inferred resource of around about 300,000 ounces, which we're looking to update in the coming months, which I'll talk about in a minute. So first thing we had to do was basically try and work out what it was that was hosting the mineralization, and understand what the controls of mineralization might be. So we started, as you always should do, I think, with diamond drilling, and just looking at the rocks that are actually hosting the mineralization. This is an example here. This is basically a granulite facies gneiss, which is pretty unusual rock type for hosting gold mineralization in Western Australia, with the mineralization basically associated with arsenopyrite and pyrite. So it's a sulfide-associated mineralization style, and the mafic gneiss basically looks like this. And when you actually plot up all of the drill intersections, something like 85% of the gold is hosted by this mafic gneiss. Some of the gold is also hosted by felsic gneiss, but that's pretty rare. And migmatite veins, which seem to have some sort of control on mineralization around the veins, but the veins themselves don't have much mineralization in them. And the whole sequence is cut by a series of granites which are also host a small amount of mineralization. So the gold is late in the whole system. The interesting thing that came out of this was that the original work that had been done suggested that the SGs for the whole project area were 2.6, and we could see immediately when you start looking at the mafic gneisses that the SG data was potentially wrong. And so we started looking at the SGs, and the mineralized mafic gneiss had an SG of around about 3.2, the mafic gneiss 3, felsic gneiss 2.7, and the migmatite veins 2.7, and the granites 2.6. And that's actually really important because there's a significant contrast in the density between the different rock types. But the most important thing was that the original resource estimates were done using a 2.6 density, whereas it is actually 3.2. So there's a significant increase in the resource estimation side of things. Because of that, we then started thinking, well, we need to actually understand the SGs in much better detail. And so we started looking at some of the downhole probe technologies that are now starting to be used by the industry. And we can basically put these tools down an RC hole, diamond hole, or RAB hole even, and collect a whole heap of different data like density, magnetic susceptibility, and actually take a picture of the inside of the hole. So you end up with an image of the hole. These tools add about an extra $2 to $4 a meter onto your drilling costs. But you end up with an RC hole that can be, oops, go back. A RC hole that can be turned into a diamond hole, which you can then plot things like your density and then your geochemistry against it. This has allowed us to very accurately start mapping our density data, and these are actually, you probably can't see it, but these are actually pictures of the RC holes. And you can start seeing some of the structures and the banding and the gneiss in the RC holes, which obviously from the RC logs you can't see. Because we know exactly where the drill traces are from the probes, and we've got the pictures of the structures, we can actually start measuring the structures in detail. So we can actually make detailed structural measurements from RC holes, which again are critical because we can zoom in, obviously, with this sort of new computer digital technologies and actually measure some very detailed structures. This has been critical to our understanding of the project in that, in this example, this was originally modeled as a steeply dipping system. When you actually look at the structures in the holes, the banding in the gneiss, it's actually dipping about 30 to 35 degrees to the southeast. And it's a series of stacked zones of mineralization, not just one zone of mineralization. So you can actually take these pictures of your RC holes, put them into the 3D packages and start looking at them in 3D. So you can actually look at the structures and confirm your structural interpretations, your geostatistical interpretations, and make sure everything matches. And given the lack of outcrop that we had to work with, these technologies have been completely invaluable in allowing us, one, to constrain the densities of the rocks into models, and also constrain our resource estimates so that we are joining the right grades of gold up with the right grades of gold. The next thing that came out of that was, well, there's this contrast and density between the different rock types. Can we actually use that to map? And it was interesting when BHP had the project, they tried every single geophysical technique you could imagine except gravity. We decided, because of those density contrasts, to use ground gravity to see if we could actually see things in the region. And this is the actual mafic gneiss that hosts the mineralization at Tampia. And you can see straight away there are other zones of mafic gneiss around the place. The other thing that within the mafic gneiss, as was suggested from some of the SG data, there are trends within the mafic gneiss, and that our view was that the higher density rocks might be where the high-grade mineralization is. So we actually, this is where the mineralization outcrops. We've actually planned a hole here down this gravity trend to see if we could hit mineralization at depth along trend from the high-grade mineralization, and lo and behold, it did. So the gravity is actually helping us even map the mineralization, which again is a very significant technique to help us answer some of the issues that we had in trying to develop the project. So we've then continued to do a whole heap of RC drilling with the aim of trying to just scope out the scale of the project. How big could it be? What's the area that we've got to look at? Testing some of these ideas in terms of the gravity. And we've now got to the point where we're now moving into infill resource drilling and extension exploration drilling. And all through this process, we've been able to hit high-grade mineralization in the sort of areas where we would expect to. So this map now has come from the gravity, and this area in blue was the area that was defined as the resource area when we first got the project. This area in red is the area we're now targeting. So we've increased the scale of the project by 2.5 times, basically. And that's the area that our recent announcement about infill drilling has just started. And I think we started 3 days ago. We got caught up in the floods, and that put us back by a couple of weeks. But we should have results coming out from this work mid-March. And we're aiming to define an indicated and measured resource, which is going to be used for following feasibility studies around about the end of June. With that, we'll also be testing extensions to mineralization defined by that drilling. The other thing of interest that came out of the previous study was these new zones of mineralization in new mafic gneisses that have got nothing to do with this mafic gneiss. And we'll also be testing those with this exploration drilling. Metallurgy, there was an issue when we first picked the project up, as there was a suggestion that it may be refractory. I'm not going to go into any real detail on the metallurgy, other than, like the geology, density is key again, which is a bit ironic, in that the heavy minerals are the minerals that host the gold. Gold itself is heavy as well, and that a combination of, from the test work we've done, a combination of some of the new gravity technologies and flotation are going to give us the sort of recoveries that we're after. We can actually concentrate all of the gold by using gravity and flotation. The fact we can produce a high-grade concentrate reduces the amount of material that needs to be processed, and is actually, funnily enough, starting to reduce our potential capital and operating costs quite significantly. So something that started as a bit of an issue is now turning into a positive for the project. So we've just completed this work. As I've said, gravity clearly for us is a key technique for understanding the project area. And we commissioned an airborne gravity survey, which started would have been about 9 days ago and was finished today. They flew through it, basically. Pardon the pun. We've started the major resource drilling program. This gravity survey will give us new targets, and I'm pretty convinced we'll actually have walk-up drill targets from the gravity survey. We'll be planning soil geochemistry over the region based on the regional gravity. We've got additional metallurgy to do, but that's firming up very nicely. Exploration RC drilling will follow on again from some of the targets and also the infill drilling. And all of that work should be done sort of around about June, which will then lead into feasibility studies, which should be completed by the end of 2017, with a bit of luck. So it's a really exciting time for the project. We've got the funding to add value to the project, and we're on our way. Thank you.
Good on you, Greg. Peel mining is